You are joining my analysis of the man with the deformed foot, F-O-O-T-E, and when you put the E on the end of the word foot, it refers to deformity or irregularity. And if you have a deformed foot or an irregularity, you cannot walk correctly. And if you're not walking correctly, you're not living correctly. By that I mean walk is usually a term in the Bible for living. So this individual doesn't live correctly because this individual is a liar. Now, shall be sounds like shall be, it shall be, and then if you look at it, S-H-E. So we're really looking at a lady with a beard, whether the beard was grown because of hormones on there or because it's just simply a Hollywood prop, I don't know. If you even look at the nose looks like it's been added on there, a prosthetic. The cheeks look puffed out. So we're kind of looking, I think, at a very small frame of an individual. The shoulders look rather sloped, okay? So basically, don't let the voice fool you, and don't let the hair fool you on the beard and everything. Shall be foot. Now, I'm going to get into some things here in a minute on this interview. It was 1994, C-SPAN.
Historian right after the birth and death of Jesus. And he is, above all, a writer. Tacitus' style is just a joy to be involved with, whether in their original Latin, which I can barely stumble through, or in a decent translation. It's very hard to get a good translation of Tacitus. A man named Broadrib did a pretty good one. And there's something about him. He writes about high-placed scoundrels for the most part. And he takes that Roman Empire apart. Some historian said about, I guess it was Claudius, that he was a successful emperor, hard-working, everything else, and then, alas, he fell upon the pen of Tacitus, which always tickled me as rude. But I like Tacitus very much. The other historians I like a lot.
When were you introduced to Tacitus?
Probably during high school. Probably was when I first encountered. I took Latin in high school. We didn't have Tacitus, so Tacitus is too hard to read. You do Caesar and then finally Virgil, but you don't get to Tacitus until you go on from there.
And also you mentioned the Peloponnesian Wars.
Right, Thucydides.
Is there any relationship between what you read there and what you have found about the Civil War?
Yes, a great deal. I'll tell you something interesting stylistically. There's a strong belief, I think it's utterly true, that Gibbon, in writing The Decline and Fall, was strongly influenced by Fielding's Tom Jones. There's also a strong belief that Thucydides' History of the Peloponnesian War was strongly influenced by his reading of Aeschylus and so.
Now I'm going to jump into a subject here. A question that was proposed to me was this: when do I think war hoaxing began? And it's a very outstanding question. It's not easy to answer, but it appears that war hoaxing began with the ancient Greeks. And then it was passed on to the Romans. So he's talking about these ancient wars, the Greek wars, the Roman wars, etc. And he's saying that the ones who author history were greatly influenced by artists. Now, if you want to take it a step further, let's say they were influenced by those in the magic arts, the mystical school, the mystery schools, which begin to get codified under Pythagoras in ancient Greece. The mystery schools have been around really since the days of Nimrod, but they will get organized, codified, and taught in ancient Greece. In fact, if you read Eustace Mullins will tell us that the mystery schools that emerge are just the Canaanites, devil worshippers who use magic arts. But they make them sophisticated, they make them presentable, they make them acceptable by making them into like an educational process and people joining them. And the finest example of this are your local Masons. They have a motto: we want to make good men even better. Ha! They want to take anyone who could possibly stay covered under the blood of Jesus and undo Christianity and get devil worship in them. So here I think Shelby Foote is telling us the origin of war hoaxing came from the ancient Greeks. And I would have to settle it right there for the moment. Let's listen in as he tells us about how the artists influenced the authors of what we know as history.
I believe that the artists are out front and have a great deal to teach historians about a good writing and dramatic composition, which I consider the best history to be. And Aristotle said in criticizing great drama that first you learn how to write well. A good sophomore high school can do a surprisingly good description of a sunset. Then you learn to...
You know, if you go to Eustace Mullins in his book, The Curse of Canaan, will tell us that Platonism, Plato, and Neoplatonism are kind of your first attempts to put a garment of learning over Baal worship, or over devil worship. And of course, Aristotle succeeds Plato. So any talk about Aristotle is just talk about Plato. And Plato himself, in the Plato's Cave, tried to tell you about the mystery schools. In fact, one of my channels, Plato's Cave Revisited, and an ancillary channel or a side-by-side channel or a backup channel is Plato's Cave Visited. Now, I haven't done much with those yet, the new one, but Plato's Cave Revisited. So Aristotle, a descendant in the schools of philosophy, with Plato being just before him, is just another way of saying possibly this is where war hoaxing really began with the ancient Greeks. So he's just in a long line of war hoaxing, and that's why he loves these ancient historians and ancient philosophers, because he's a liar. She's a liar. She be Foote.
Characters that can stand up and cast a shadow. And the last thing you learn to do is plot.
Cast a shadow. Well, that smacks of Plato's Cave, does it not? So he's saying if you learn how to write novels, learn how to write fiction, you learn how to write fantasy, you can write history.
That's the skill that comes last, if it comes at all. And that is where I think historians neglect a huge advantage. I think history has a plot. You don't make it up, you discover it. It's there. Oscar Wilde talks about life imitating art. I have noticed that when a man dies, no matter at what age or by what cause, his life then has a beginning and a middle and an end. and sometimes his death explains his youth. Good friends of mine who were killed in the war spent their youth exactly as if they knew they were going to be killed over.
See how calmly he's talking about people killed in a war? Do you know, I cannot talk calmly about the death of family members. I cannot talk calmly about people that have recently died as if it's just like talking about the condition of the weather. You know why he talks so calmly? Because they didn't die in a war. In fact, most likely they're just all fictional. Because we don't really know who this individual is. He's an actor, putting on a show, selling books for the man, selling books for the Baal worshippers.
It's a very strange business, but that's art taking over, insisting on giving a thing form when it seems to be formless. And I think that when you supply that form, and mind you, I'm not talking about superimpose it, I discover the form. It makes that a very exciting reading experience.
If you pick up...
So in other words, if you understand how to write an exciting novel, you can write exciting history. Because there's no difference! Well, I'll end this video and go on to some more. Thank you for watching for now. Stay tuned for more.